So everyone, I am little kid excited to offer these three scientists who are going to speak to you today. One of the complaints we sometimes hear about scientists is we're inclined to go into our labs and close our doors and not necessarily talk to one another. And one of the things that I'm the most proud of is in developing and crafting the presentation for you tonight, that they really took the individual strands of their own research programs and they wove them together into a really special cloth. Neeraj, we've already heard a little bit about his recent accomplishment. I'm happy to also introduce you to Kevin Boulding, who studies how the brain processes olfactory information, particularly with regards to aging and memory. And of course, Juyun Lim, who is one of our more senior scientists and who studies how the body, how taste, when we put it in our mouth, how our body responds to it. So there's some exciting surprises that await you. I think that we're going to go ahead and get started. So why don't you go ahead, Neeraj?
We're going to start off with, can you hear us? Yeah. We're going to start off with our memories and a deep dive into it. This heart within me, I can feel, and I judge that it exists. This world around me, I can touch, and I likewise judge that it exists. There ends my knowledge, everything else is construction. If I try to seize the self of which I feel so sure about, if I try to summarize it and define it, it's nothing but water flowing through my fingers. That was Albert Camus in his 1942 book, Myth of Sisyphus. He and his contemporary, Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, and their predecessor, Arthur Schopenhauer, thought deeply about perception of reality, a space where material reality meets the consciousness. They repeatedly come to the conclusion that it's a futile attempt, because at any given moment, we have access to a very thin slice of reality, because we have access to a very limited number of sensory modalities. But they were appreciative of the fact that these sensory modalities is all we have to access reality. These sensory modalities shape our experiences. The profoundness of these experiences shape what memories get formed. Those memories crystallize into our personalities, and individual personalities lay the bedrock for forming higher order human connection, from societies cultures, and civilizations. Later part of the 18th century, uh, biologist Jacob van Uxkall also was thinking about similar philosophical questions, but he took a biological approach to it and summarized or innovated a concept called Umwelt. It's a German for environment. But the way he defined it as we all are limited with, or we are all experiencing reality with our sensory bubbles. I love the example of a tick. It has access to only very few sensory modalities. It can differentiate the texture of our hair. It can feel the warmth of the blood, and it can smell only one smell, butyric acid. That's all. It's oblivious to everything going around it. It cannot appreciate a bird singing around. It cannot appreciate the sound or smell of a raindrop hitting the forest floor. That's it. And so are we. We are limited with our sensory modalities, and that's how we access our realities. But this pursuit of understanding sensory modalities, it's not only from an academic pursuit of understanding reality or abstractness. It also has practical ramification. I think one of the biggest blockbuster drug of our generation was discovered in understanding the sensory modalities of some of these animals and understand what those boundaries are. And it's no surprise that FDA approval of that drug correlate with the first biotech company or pharmaceutical company to hit a $1 trillion market cap. In my lab, we are very interested in understanding sensory modalities of animals and enrichment of evolutionary biology, which has led to evolution of these sensory modalities. In my lab in particular, we study hibernating animals from the furthest corner of this planet. In Arctic, these hibernating animals have some of the most extreme physiological adaptation. We know very little about how they achieve what they do, and we hope that studying them would take us to finding novel cures for some of the most challenging human diseases of our time. I just wish I could take all of you to one of our field trip to the Arctic or take you to our lab for a tour. I can't physically take you there right now, but due to advancement in technologies, I could probably take you on a virtual tour. Oops, I said technologies. Okay, this is from our last trip to Arctic, where we go and study not only animals in their wild environment, but bring them back to the lab to study the physiological adaptation. In this case, hibernating Arctic ground squirrel, which has some of the most extreme physiological adaptation, surviving below 0-degree body temperature. We're developing cutting-edge circuit neuroscience tools in the lab, which will allow us, we hope it will allow us and give a peek into how they're achieving these physiological qualities. But I think the strongest part of the research program which we are building is not only studying these extraordinary animals, but studying side by side preclinical model of diseases. For example, we are focused on understanding metabolic diseases like obesity, diabetes, hypertension, sarcopenia, using mouse models so we can easily translate the findings, what we find with these discoveries. We're also interested in studying neurodegenerative diseases in the lab using mouse model and human-derived stem cell model. And we hope some of the findings from these animals in the Arctic would lead us to novel discoveries in there. Oops. Oops. Oh, no, hold on. This. Okay. Okay, so here is one new piece of data. I've been only here for 6 months, but we just got this data last week. These are two different mouse. One has a mutation from a Swedish family, which has early onset of Alzheimer's disease. These are tissue cleared and imaged using volumetric imaging using light sheet microscopy. I haven't had the chance to interpret the data, but I hope you will be able to help me interpret this data. One of these mice has Alzheimer, and they have plaques which are similar to what develop in human patients. And teal color is the plaque, and pink color is the immune cells that surround those things. And these are the preclinical models of it. I haven't been able to analyze the data. I know a lot of smart people are coming here, and you'll help me analyze this data and interpret which. So one animal is on the top, and the other animal is in the bottom. I think in a minute you'll see a hologram of these two data sets, and you could tell me which animal has Alzheimer here and which doesn't. Any guesses? Yes, thank you. Okay, so that's not the only thing what we're doing at Monell. There are amazing science going on about other modalities, and Kevin going to talk about his foray into olfaction. Oops. If I stop this. We're not there completely with the technology.
Roman hedges and walkways, graffiti-laden precincts graced with pallid fireworks, so even the most tumble-down niches seem breeze-swept, festive now with fragrance. So here we are talking about how our chemical senses shape our internal lives and our shared cultural bonds. And aging naturally enters into that conversation. And it's not a coincidence that Neeraj and I have a shared interest in how neurons are affected by aging and disease. Smell often changes as we age, and aging is the greatest known risk factor for neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Neuroscience labs now have new tools in hand that allow us to measure the activity of thousands of neurons and thousands of genes and the computations that connect them. And there's a sense that we're in a real moment of possibility to deeply understand how aging affects the brain and perhaps be able to correct it. Now, our research institution has a long legacy of studying olfaction, our sense of smell. Olfaction is closely tied to aging because our sense of smell often deteriorates as we age. We can become less sensitive and have trouble detecting odor molecules. We can also find it more difficult to tell different odors apart. Some of that decline may begin in the nose, where the odorant receptors reside. But to be able to identify specific odors, we think that that type of operation is more likely to occur in neural circuits deep in the brain. That's why my lab is focused on what happens with central olfactory processing. In aged animals, we see that some parts of these circuits go a bit haywire. They become too active, and they have trouble telling different odors apart. Right now, we're trying to learn what types of neurons are affected in this process and how fundamental processes of cellular aging may be driving these changes. We're also interested in understanding whether this dysfunction is general to all different odorants or whether highly overlapping odor mixtures that are more difficult to discriminate may be particularly strongly affected. This points to a broader issue in our field. We've learned a lot about olfaction using simple stimuli, single odor molecules one at a time. But odors in the real world are rarely like that. They're more often complex mixtures with variable composition. If we want to understand smell as it's actually lived, we have to move closer to that richness. A nice example is the smell of jasmine. Jasmine flowers and jasmine tea are both valued for their odor quality. In the literature, you can find such a thing as a jasmine tea flavor index, which can be optimized by combining molecules like linalool, indole, and methylantranolate. None of those individual molecules will smell exactly like jasmine on its own. To produce the scent that we would recognize as the scent of jasmine, we need to combine those molecules along with many others. So we decided to use literary references and poems as a path to the more human side of chemical senses. So now I'll read you a poem called Jasmine. by Cyrus Cassells. These are the days of jasmine in Rome, when headlong, emboldened April has dissolved, and the joyous braiding of sun and rain brings the sweet, steady broadcast. When I step from the supper-time train, that's what greets me. Roman hedges and walkways, graffiti-laden precincts graced with pallid fireworks, so even the most tumble-down niches seem breeze-swept, festive now with fragrance. Jasmine, the elating moment's shibboleth, the cool, enrapturing night's cavalry. Even crone glorious Daria, my terrace-loving neighbor, confides. When Galliano came back from the front, his right hand was bandaged, but in his uninjured one, poet, he held a fistful of jasmine he'd picked along the path to my door. How could I not become his wife? What this poem captures beautifully is the immediacy of smell, but also its specificity. A scent doesn't just wash over us as something vague. It carries fine distinctions between places, moments, and memories. That precision is part of what makes olfaction so interesting to study. Think about lemon and lime. They're clearly different, but they overlap. Each is a complex mixture, but with shared chemical features. To tell them apart means separating overlapping mixtures with distinct percepts. That kind of distinction could possibly carry more information than the type of coarse smell testing that we rely on now. And there's a possibility that mixture testing could offer an improved diagnostic probe, especially for the central computations that are disrupted with aging. Others in the field, including Joel Mainland, are asking how odor molecules and mixtures map onto perception. And my lab approaches the same problem from the neural side. How are odor mixtures shaping activity in the olfactory brain? This is part of what makes olfaction compelling. It lets us connect molecules to brain activity to perception, and perception to the lived texture of memory and experience. And in the context of aging, it may give us a sensitive window into how neural systems begin to change. Now, Juyun Lim will continue the story.
Bitter greens, sour citrus, sweet berries, each tells the body what it needs. The tongue reads the world, translating flavors into life and teaching the heart to trust the senses. I love this poem. I love this poem because it so well captures something that science is now discovering. Most of us think of taste as pleasure, a reward of eating something good. But it is more than that. It is a signal to our body. Sweetness tells our body that sugar is coming. Sourness primes our stomach that acid is coming. The deep savoriness of umami says protein is coming. Our taste buds are the body's first line of communication, reading the food that we eat, telling our digestive system how to prepare before even you start swallowing. Let me bring this life with two short stories from my lab. First, saliva. Think about food, starchy food that you like. For me, it is a warm bread, loaf of bread, straight out of the oven. For my husband, it is double-baked potatoes. He's from Midwest. Those food are made of thousands and thousands of glucose molecules, all connected together, make long chains. Far too big for our body to absorb as it is. But the moment you take a bite and chew, your saliva is get to work. Saliva isn't just water. It contains enzymes, among others. One key enzyme called salivary alpha amylase starts breaking them down right in your mouth. Digestion doesn't start in the stomach. It begins with the very first bite. Understanding how this process influences metabolism and health is critical. And that is one of the frontiers that we work at Monell. Second story, anticipation. The moment you taste something sweet, your brain signals to your body, actually pancreas, to release insulin. Not only after your body digests food, not only after sugar gets into the bloodstream. Rather, the instant you taste it, the brain sends a signal. Your body is anticipating, preparing, keeping your metabolism smooth before sugars have been absorbed. Now let's think of a moment. What happened? You taste something sweet and no sugar is coming. What happened after years of diet drinking and diet products? Does the body eventually stop listening to the signal? How do the tongue and the brain and our organs actually talk to each other? These questions are at the heart of our research at Monell right now. Every bite you take is a conversation between your food and your body, between flavor and health, and between what you taste and how you live. At Monell, we are uncovering how that conversation works. And what we discover will change how we think about food, health, and even the trust in our own body. Thank you.
Thank you to our scientists very much. So now it is your turn if you have any questions for our scientists. So please don't be shy. Let's see if anybody has something that they want to ask. One of the things I was really struck with is hearing them speak and to tell their story was the sort of idea of memory, particularly memories that we had as early parts of our life. And so my question to Kevin is, do you think that the memories that we form in childhood that are related to the sense of smell have some sort of increased potency as we get older? I mean, what do you really think about the effect of these memories formed when you were young now that we're older?
Testing. So I don't have a scientific expert answer to that question because I don't think we have the data or the type of experiments to really get an answer to that. But I can tell you that while learning about these phenomena and talking to people anecdotally, it's clear that, and I think there probably is literature on this, that it's clear that people do focus on these early childhood memories when they talk about the rich, vivid memory recall that they experienced with some specific odor memory. So I think they are potent, and I think they're probably potent because they're embedded when you're young. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they grow in potency with age, but maybe other things fall away. Maybe that's.
Thank you, Kevin. So my other question is probably what's on your mind too. So Neeraj, how did you do it with the hologram?
Did what?
Your final demonstration.
It didn't come out that well, but yeah, the brains. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we just got these data almost over the weekend. This was a long pursuit to be able to see volumetrically where these plaques start forming and how do they grow about it. And it just technologies that have been developed in past 5-7 years that allow us to take this quantitative way of looking at these plaque formation. I think right now is the prime time to actually solve some of these cutting edge or some of the most difficult neurological problems. Yeah.
Thank you. So my question, Michelle. No. Here, let me run down to you with the mic.
I can probably speak pretty loudly.
Yeah, but let's everybody.
I thought it was great that both Juyun and Kevin brought up some poetry and talked about the inspiration of the language of the poetry. And I heard Kevin, when he first brought it up, was saying that it was sort of guiding you a little bit on understanding the perception maybe that people experience, like the real lived experience versus what you're getting maybe from the neural level. So I was wondering if you could talk a little about why language and poetry might be so informative when thinking about the human experience in olfaction or taste. I know, it's large, but you brought it up.
Well, so I know only a little about this. Okay, from my perspective, the reason why I would look at a poem to think about how odors are experienced is maybe because of the descriptive words that go with it, and like the challenge of putting the sort of abstract experience of odor perception into words. That's a pretty fascinating piece of the puzzle here. Now that's been formalized in scientific measurement. We can get people to tell us specifically what they think an odor, the profile of an odor. The one other sort of connection I can make with that concept is that my understanding is that when you're trying to train people to remember odors, like to tell you whether they've ever experienced them before, just a simple odor memory test, is this familiar, is this novel? My understanding is that when people have the ability to name the odor, that enhances their ability to remember it. So I think there's a point at which the sort of abstract odor perception gets connected to a thing in the world that greatly enhances its durability in terms of memory.
So thank you. I wanted just to wrap up here and to say a particular thank you to our scientists. It takes some bravery for our scientists. They're used to sharing their heads and the work of their hands, but you got a little bit of their heart tonight in their poetry and their art. So I'd like to just hear a round of applause for them and thank them very much.